We're kicking off the other stage with Gaz Williams here. Gaz has been enjoying the Elektron setup and, of course, the MIDI bass and all these other things that are going on. So tell me a little bit about what's going on here.
Okay, so firstly, this is so overwhelming, this setup. I'm trying to sort of tame it, basically. And basically what we got is, this is a MIDI bass. And it's quite a sophisticated bass. It's not using a pitch to MIDI setup. It's using these frets.
This is the Industrial Radio.
Industrial Radio, Australian bass. And it's a nice bass in its own right, but it's also, it uses contacts of it's a thing called fret sense. And those frets have got little splits in them, meaning that each one is essentially like a button. There are then little piezo's in here which detect which string you're playing and velocity. And then these ones tell you which notes that you're playing. So anyway.
But that, I mean, the advantage is it's faster than bass. It doesn't, because usually the wave cycle is what slows it down.
Exactly, So you don't really have latency issues with it. Right. But there is a thing about MIDI is quite dumb. It's like a note on, note off kind of thing.
And that
velocity.
can send a lot of stuff, I'd imagine, right?
Yes. Now there is they've made a piece of software called Imprint, and I'm not using that tonight, but next time I probably will use it. What Imprint does is Imprint takes string energy and applies it to...
Even more expression.
Yes, because I think that's the thing that MIDI doesn't do. I'm mentioning that really first because as good as this is, it's more to do with inherent limitations of MIDI. But what I've got here then is I've got a bunch of Elektron devices, the Analog 4, these are all the Mark IIs, Analog 4, Octatrack, and the Rhythm. And there's also there's an Elektron analog drive here. This is a distortion with 8 different analog circuits. This is all MIDIable as well. So basically everything is MIDIable. There's a TC Helicon vocal effects, which I'll use in a little bit. And also here is an Eventide H9 effects unit, again with excellent MIDI. There's a couple of special little tools in here though, one of which is the RetroKits RK004, which is a little MIDI hub. It's an intelligent MIDI hub, and it really is the kind of heart of this system in many ways.
I've got one of those with a Sonicstate logo on the back.
You
of
do,
it, yeah.
and in
special
fact,
edition.
there is a little sync out on there, and that sync out can send clock out, but also with the web configurator, you can turn it into a synth. It's called the Batt synth, named after Nick Batt. How about that?
What an honour.
To be honest, it's a really simple synth. It's just a square wave.
Yeah, it's rubber. Thank you. And it's really fat sounding. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's move on.
So that's one of the sort of special kind of things. Why that is good is it automatically configures. It'll recognize a MIDI in signal or if it's a MIDI out signal. So it will automatically configure itself. So that's kind of useful for here because we've got a bunch of MIDI inputs coming into it. There's not actually many, those are mostly MIDI ins. So we've got a bunch of MIDI inputs. And this brings us to this other little thing here. Now, this is a brand new product from Ploytech, German synth company.
Oh, yeah, they make that little MIDI-powered synth,
that little tiny synth. And what this is called is the 1-2. And this is a brilliant thing, because basically it's a clock. It's a MIDI clock generator, but can also... So it's like a tap tempo pedal, but it's like an intelligent tap tempo. The tempo comes from there. And there's a little toggle switch on the back. When that switch is down, 2 taps, and it will start... So, 1, 2, 3, 4, oh. And then double tap.
Stop. All right,
Stop.
Okay, that's useful.
Yeah, so that's where all the clock for the whole rig
Which means you can kind
from.
of be a bit more free and...
Yeah, because you can just keep tapping it and playing it, and you feel like the connection with the clock. So that's a really helpful sort of setup. There's this big old Roland foot controller here, which I call the Sarge, because it's the kind of boss. It's the boss. And there is a really cool feature that's got, which is called patch mode. And what patch mode lets you do is it lets you program lots of MIDI messages into a single press. So when I press a pad, a switch like so, it sends multiple program changes on different channels to these different devices and puts them into into their kind of...
Are you ready, gang? Yeah.
Yeah, right. And we're also using a Midas MR18. It's like a mixer in a box. That's what the iPad is there for. I'm not actually going to touch that much. It's more for just so I can see what's going on. So the iPad in this particular case is just acting as a mixer, but that is also an audio interface. I've got a big stinking clag nut hanging off the back of that there.
Yeah, you have,
and that is enabling it also. If I wanted to, I can take a multi-track audio feed into that and grab everything on independent channels.
Right.
So it's a pretty awesome setup. Over here, we've got a TC Helicon Voice Live, which is also MIDI'd up. And again, we can send all sorts of interesting MIDI to it. What I mean by that is note data can go to it.
Okay.
And I'm not really going to use much of that today, but that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of floor controllers here, which my cables keep getting tangled up in. Expression pedal for the Eventide, and a sustain pedal, which goes into the little interface box that comes with this.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Now, this is also receiving program change.
Right.
And one of the things that makes that quite interesting is I can change the behavior of this from it being like a monophonic to like a polyphonic, or the one that I'm using pretty much for all of this tonight is the polyphonic. It's almost like an MPE device.
Right, so each string is its own voice.
It's its own
MIDI channel.
MIDI channel. And that's why the Analog 4 by Elektron is a very cool little thing for this setup, because the Analog 4 is 4 independent synthesizers that you can chain together and make, to make it like a analog polysynth for 1 string per voice.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to try and play a song. And this song is liable to go wrong. So I need a little bit of generosity from everybody.
Yesterday,
Thanks so much, everyone. It's a little bit, I'm just like, these transitions are like really tricky at the moment. I'm going to figure it out, but yeah. So what I'm going to do now, I'd like to bring up to the stage a good old friend of mine, wherever he may be. Here he comes. Mr. Nick Batt, can I join? And we're going to see. Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
In my nightmare, this was happening to me, not you. You were looking on smugly at me.
This is like that dream you have on stage when somebody goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and either nothing works, you don't know any of the songs, and you haven't got any trousers on, right? Ah! Way. So yeah, this is the little sculpt, and we'll just
source a tempo.
Yes, go on then. What the hell?
175.
Ah.
Give it to me. Oh no, it's playing with me.
that us? Thank you very much.